What are you doing, young man?
I want that one. It's mine. You're a special ed kid. It's mine. Dummy. Hey, baby. Let's do it.
Oh.
If you love me, you do it. Come on. Oh, we'll get high first.
Oh.
I'm Marty Nemko. If you've got an easy child, no problem raising a kid to be kind. But what if your kid isn't naturally so easy?
For example, what if your kid is like this? Can you imagine what his mother must have gone through?
Indeed, but I need to introduce her. This is Barbara Nemko, Superintendent of Schools, Napa County. I'm merely her pain-in-the-butt husband, Marty Nemko. Okay, so let's start by talking about prevention. As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Do you want to start or you want me to start?
Well, let's start by saying what we're trying to do here. Many people have to cope with a child who is not naturally sweet, kind, easy, following directions. How do you raise a child like that and make it easy for him or her and you? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so let's start with a typical kind of prevention thing. Everybody knows, you say, kids are more likely to do what you do rather than what you tell them.
Right.
You got to model it. So, for example, let's say you are, the kid comes to you, and I'm going to be the kid, and I come to you, and I say, Mommy, I'm unhappy, help me, help me, help. What would modeling a kind mom be in that situation?
I can't imagine a kid coming and just saying, Mommy, I'm unhappy, but you would say, tell me, why are you unhappy? What's going on?
So in other words, of course there are times you're going to be busy, you're going to say, I don't have time for this right now, I'm making dinner, I got 4 things at once, but where possible, you're making a face. What?
Because I think if your child is crying and comes to you and says he's unhappy, this would not be the time to be concentrating on dinner. That's when you would want to stop and pause and deal with it.
And yet in the real world, when parents are frazzled, they really do say, come on, not now, I can't. And so, but that is the kind of modeling that conveys to a child more than all the lecturing in the world that yes, being kind is important, and keeping you from being unhappy is important. So
absolutely.
So modeling is very important. Another thing is moderate limit setting. Another example of modeling. If I am, let's say you say to me you want, I say it's time for dinner, and what's a typical thing that a kid might say?
I'm busy, I'm playing.
The bad parent, the unkind parent, say, I'm sorry, it's dinner time, sit down now. The good parent might say, 2 more minutes and that's it.
No, I think the best way to do it is you say to the child, in 5 minutes we're going to have dinner. So why don't you wind up what you're doing and put your toys away, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning.
Why would that long lecture be better than, okay, 2 minutes? Why would it be wise to say that, to give all that explanation?
Depends on your child, but you would want the child to know it's time to stop. And if you only say 2 minutes, then the kid is going to come to the table and the toys are going to be strewn all over the floor, and then you have a problem afterwards, and then you might get irritated. So let him know what's expected.
All right. So, but again, we're modeling kind of moderation, erring toward kindness. It doesn't mean laissez-faire. Kindness does not mean letting the kid do whatever, but it's setting reasonable limits, but having a measure of flexibility. On the other hand, if I'm punching my sister, it's not time for making flexibility. You're making a face. Why?
No, I was just thinking that it's so easy when we say these things, and we have 2 granddaughters.
Yes.
One would go so well with all of these things. You tell her 5 minutes, she's going to get ready, she'll do what she's asked to do. And then there's the other one, who doesn't pay attention to any of that and is likely to have a temper tantrum in the middle.
Okay, great. So this show is supposed to be about dealing with
difficult children.
So let's make believe I'm going to be the difficult one, and I'm going to have, no, I don't want. I want to play. I need another 20 minutes now. What would you do if you are in reality, but trying to raise a kind child, but set a limit? What would you do? No, and I get on the floor and I'm having a temper tantrum.
I would say, dinner is going to be ready. I know you don't want to stop what you're doing, but that's what's happening. We're all going to be sitting down to dinner. If you don't want to eat, that's up to you.
That's right. I'm not hungry. I'm not going to do it.
And then I would allow her to come down when she's hungry, because the more I give into it and the more I pay attention to it, the more she's likely to do it. If I just say, okay, and I leave, I guarantee she's going to be down and having dinner.
Makes good sense. So, in addition to modeling, we all know, again, that praise works to some extent if it's not given gratuitously, if it's not just given for nothing. And punishment can work too. What are your thoughts about praise and punishment as a way of raising a kind child who's not naturally kind?
I think if all you do is punish, that in some way rewards bad behavior because they get a lot of attention for it. I think you want to give attention when you catch a child doing something right.
Okay. So let's role play that. So let's say for once in my life let's say I'm really a difficult child and I'm letting...
What do you mean say?
Right. So
I can't imagine. I really can't.
So let's say my sister is playing with this toy that I like, the iPad. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Kid's playing with the iPad, and usually I'm trying to grab the iPad and have my kid play with, I want to play my game. But for once, I'm watching her play her game. What might you actually say?
I would say, I really like the way you are taking turns using the iPad, that you're letting her use it, and then she's going to let you use it. That's exactly the way we can share.
Okay. And is it would that work with our difficult granddaughter? Would that be helpful? What would happen?
What would happen? She would say, Sarah's had it for 5 minutes longer than I have it. That's what she'd say.
And what would you then say?
I would say, no, I was timing it, and actually you have it for exactly the same amount of time. And I really like it when you don't always try to make Sarah unhappy.
That brings up an important point, the timing issue. You know, in the real world, moms and dads are exhausted from their days.
Oh,
They're
yes.
often working outside the home. Then they're coming home. They do have to make dinner. They can't always send out for pizza and Chinese. And then they've got 2 kids, each with their own needs. They want a little bit of time for themselves. And so you're saying, I've been timing, that's not real in the real world. What would you really do? You're not timing anything. Would you ignore? At what point would you punish this difficult child who's stealing the iPad from her sister?
I think one of the things that you do is set up a chart with different behaviors and then reward when they're done well. And that could include all of the typical routines, making your bed, brushing your teeth, coming to dinner on time. And every time that happens, you put up a star. And then there's some kind of a reward for it.
What role does punishment have in any of this? I mean, timeout. I can just say, you know, and I'll say, you know, directly to you here, camera people, I really think there is never a time for hitting a child. All it does is it'll get short-term compliance, but long-term it's going to engender rebellion, and it teaches your kid the modeling that the way you deal with conflict is with physical violence. That's a no-no. That said, there may be times when punishment is appropriate, but I'm curious as to your thoughts. What are your thoughts about punishment with regard to a difficult child?
I think timeouts are a good thing. If a child cannot behave in a way that makes other people want to be around her, then I think it's appropriate to say, right now you're having a timeout. So you have to be away from the group.
And right, so whether it's a teacher or the parent with the child or the
Absolutely.
party or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so I'm going to be the kid, I'm a difficult child. She did the same thing and she didn't get time out.
You have a timeout now. I'll talk about her later. That's between her and me. This is between you and me. You have a timeout
And
now.
what if the kid took the time out but then snuck back in before the 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever? Okay, look at that's very interesting, that look. That's the school mom look. And that's a really good look. You know what I really
For a
like?
school mom, it's not a particularly good look if you're out with friends.
What I like it because it's not a lecture. It gets your point across without having to say a word.
I think that teachers have always done that. We used to practice something that we called with-itness. And with-itness was, if you saw a child misbehaving, you didn't say a word. You just looked at the child with a kind of little smile for a start, like, I know what you're doing. And child always got the message. If they didn't, then you took 1 or 2 steps and you just stood a little closer and you looked with that smile. And if they still didn't, you got really close, but you still haven't said a word. Just the child is very aware that you are tracking that behavior. And finally, if they're still not paying attention, then you whisper in the child's ear, because you don't want other people to hear, but you just want the child to know, and you say, I want you to put that away right now, or I want you to pay attention right now. And honestly, in all the years that I taught, that always worked.
Okay.
And I think we can do that with children at home, too.
You think so? So let's go through that again, because I think that's pretty important. It's like increasingly invasive forms of intervention. So if I am, okay, so I'm the kid, and let's say my sister or my brother is here, and I am doing, the sister's here for purposes of this, so, right? So, it's really very hard for me to continue being bad when you're doing that.
Oh, good.
That's a very good.
I'll have to use that at home.
It's a good. Right. Well, just put me on a leash, I think, is more.
They have long ones. They have a little bit of
Those
freedom.
expanding times.
But see, this is nice.
The dog, yeah, I don't know if you can see
The dog on the floor with the leash.
Okay,
tied
but let's
to
say,
the chair.
okay, so typically what's going to happen is I will stop being bad for a second. Now you've turned back to making dinner or whatever you're doing, and I'm back to playing with my sister and being mean, and now what? Well, it's her fault. She's been bad. She's doing this. Then, of course, you would get closer to me. You would physically get
But
closer.
this now says, I'm still smiling, but it says, don't be ridiculous. That is the
You're
most
full of it.
feeble excuse I have ever heard in my entire life.
When does touch get involved? So in other words, if I'm the parent and you're the bad kid, be bad. For a change, you be bad.
I can't imagine. I don't even know how.
You're right. You're such a goody-goody. So you're bad. You're doing all that. And if I went and I said, and I looked at you and didn't say a word.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You don't think holding?
Well, no, that was
child-
kind of hard. I think I would put just a gentle hand
Okay.
and say, and maybe point.
Okay. All right. So let's summarize it again, because I think it's important. It's like having lines of defense against misbehavior. So the first line of defense is, first of all, is prevention, with modeling, praising where appropriate, moderate rules with flexibility, modeling, being
reinforcement
kind.
and positive reinforcement, and setting up a system where a child knows exactly what you have to do in order to get a star on the chart and how you lose the star.
Okay. And then when there is misbehavior, as you say, you've got to nip it in the bud. You know, what teachers use called with-itness. You need to, as soon as you see something, because it tends to escalate so you nip it in the bud and you do it with as minimally a confrontive way as possible. With the school marm look, demonstrate it again, please. It's such a very attractive look. And if necessary, folding the arms. And if necessary, establishing physical proximity, getting a little leaning in. Possibly then touching the shoulder. And
a good look in the eye, because making that kind of eye contact says to the child, I am so onto you. I know what you're doing. You really want to look me in the eye and tell me that your behavior is okay.
So, and also I imagine if the child's younger, getting down to their eye level, so that it's easier to do that.
Good point, yes.
Makes sense.
You don't want to be standing over the child and glaring down at them. You want to be on your knees and looking directly.
Now, punishment, we've only talked so far about timeout. That was certainly one option. Is there any other punishment that you, as an educator, and your
Absolutely.
PhD is in educational psychology, any other kind of punishment that you deem
Taking away
worthy?
privileges. Particularly these days, well, certain things. For example, kids today have devices. And child is spending too much time.
Devices. We're not talking about vaping devices. We're
talking about
iPads and phones.
and tablets and those kinds of
Right.
things. And so you establish.
Of course, unfortunately, they have the vaping too. But anyway, that's another story. We'll talk about that later. Actually, we are going to be talking about drugs and sex as part of this difficult child thing, because otherwise we're delusional. We're in the real world here. Go ahead.
I think if you set up rules for how you're going to, when and how you're going to use the devices, and one of them has to be that these are the times that you have it, and the rest of the time I have it, so that I can put it away. That way you don't have the child who is under the covers with the iPad still working on it at midnight.
Sure.
Of course it would be you. But if you take it and you put it somewhere where they can't get it, and I would not let a child have a device in their bedroom when they go to sleep, because it is, number one, way too easy for them
It's
to
so
get
seductive.
it. Number two, they hear a ping and they know they got a message, and so they're out of bed in a heartbeat, or it wakes you up. You hear that even in your unconscious, and you get up and you want to see, what is this message? Because we all have that famous fear of missing out.
Absolutely. So, okay, removal of privileges. There's an art to that as well. You know, what it's bothered me is when I've seen parents say, you know what, you're not driving a car. You know, the kid's got a teenager's got a driver's license. You're not for the rest of the semester. Or unless you instead of getting D's, unless you get at least B's, you're not going to go to summer camp. What's wrong with those kind of punishments?
They're excessive. And in a child's world, the end of the semester is eternal. They don't see time the way we see time. So I think you want to limit your punishments to a short period of time. Today, this is going to happen, or it's late today, tomorrow, this is going to happen. And then you want to reward them when they are doing the right thing, and then reinstate whatever it is that you took away.
Yeah, I like it really. Even tomorrow feels too late. I think it really needs to be immediate.
Well, not if it's 9 o'clock at night.
But I mean,
and
even
if
it was, for example, if normally, let's say I read you a story before you go to bed. You know what? I have warned you so many times, and you have continued to be mean to your sister. No story tonight. So that's immediate, and it's something. But it's got to be something the kid values, obviously. You know, if the kid doesn't really care about the story, and it's more for you to try to teach the kid to read, it's not so good. But assuming the kid likes that, doing something immediate, or if the kid normally says, okay, 1 hour of TV time. iPad is fine because that's interactive, that's something. But passive TV, 1 hour a night is normal. You're only going to get a half hour a night. That's a modest punishment. It gets the point across without it being possible that you're being accused of being too extreme.
Right,
You buy
assuming that all happens early enough in the evening that you can say, yes, I like that, obviously.
Let's turn to specific problems that are not just with the toy or whatever. Let's talk about homework, the kid who is not going to sit there nicely and do their homework. And then let us indeed talk about sex, and let's talk about drugs with a non-compliant, not nice kid. What are your thoughts about the kid who simply refuses to do the homework, or scrambles it and does it in 3 minutes?
Once again, our older granddaughter, yes, she tends to do homework in the quickest way possible. I just want to get it done.
Sounds familiar.
I'm finished. That was how you did homework,
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Or unless I made a paper airplane out of the worksheet to begin with. Continue.
It's amazing that you managed to grow up.
But you know what? That's a significant point. One does not need to be perfect in order to grow up and be reasonable. And some would argue that I'm not reasonable.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that I'm buying that.
The moderation thing. You know, some parents who have had difficult lives themselves figure they need to be super strict in order for their kid to turn out good. It's not good enough parenting is the right parenting, both for your child's sake so that it isn't ongoing confrontation, and for your own sake so you can live a life and enjoy each other. So the memories that you have of your child growing up and your child's memories of growing up are basically one that is more positive. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be moderate.
I'm not sure that there is such a thing as perfect parenting.
But there's some who try, but but they're really restrictive. You know, they demand perfect behavior. And I just think that makes me, I see it in the supermarket. I see a kid who's a toddler who may be in the back, and the kid pulls an item for whatever, and the parent hits the kid, or the parent yells at the kid. In a way, it's kind of cute. The kid wants to pull off the Lucky Charms or whatever. You know, I think your look, the famous schoolmarm look, could go miles. And it results in the child not having this antipathy, not having this conflictual, oppositional relationship with the parent.
I think you have to explain to a child that just because you see something anywhere doesn't mean it's yours and you can take it.
That doesn't apply to you when you're looking for it in a shoe store. You see it, you take it. How many pairs of shoes do you have, Dr. Nemko?
I lost count some time ago.
All right, are we getting off track? Okay,
Yeah.
we'll be good.
We are?
Guilty. Okay. So now, let's turn back to the homework. I hate my homework. I hate it. I either don't do it or I scribble it or whatever. Educator. What would you do
Well,
in
the
this
first
situation?
thing I would want to know is what's happening in school when you bring that homework in. Because if the teacher is allowing that and just checking it off, I would then have a talk with the teacher and say, one of the problems that we're having at home is that Leah pays very little attention to her homework, but there don't seem to be consequences in school. So can you and I come up with a plan where she understands that she needs to do it with some level of quality?
And what if the teacher says, Dr. Nemko, we have 23 kids in my class. They have very varied needs. I have special needs children. I have gifted children. I have native speakers of English. I have people who are new immigrants. I have behavior problems, and I have a family myself. You should be able to understand that. I can't correct all their homework. That has got to be your responsibility, Mrs. Nemko. What would you say?
I think that if you're not going to look at it, it's inappropriate to give homework. I think homework should be given where somebody is checking it, and if the teacher doesn't have time to collect it all, then even if the children exchange papers and go over it and the teacher just walks up and down the aisles, somebody needs to look at the homework. Otherwise, you are sending a message to children that I'm going to tell you to do something for no particular purpose.
I agree. It's a really good point. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So now I'm this kid, and I'm either not doing it or I'm dashing it off quickly. You're my mom. Now what?
Well, again, that would be on the chart of responsibilities, and there's homework. And when the homework is done appropriately, and you've tried, you don't have to get it perfectly, but you've at least tried to do it, there's a star for your homework.
I don't like to go to external rewards. That's extrinsic motivation. I'd rather start with this. I would say, look, the typical thing a kid says is, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to learn this? So I'd probably say, you may or may not be right. You may or may not need to know how to calculate the angles of an isosceles triangle. But truthfully, there's a couple of reasons why you should do it. And I know this sounds grown up, but having the discipline to do things you don't always like is part of life, and you will be much more successful if you do. And you'll get better grades. And so I know it's yucky. Would you rather do the homework in the kitchen? I'll be here while I'm cooking dinner. Would you rather do it in your room? Do it with a sense of pride. I know you can just dash it off, but do it with a sense of pride. What do you think about that approach?
I think different ages have different approaches.
Of course.
Isosceles triangles, we're talking about older kids.
Not anymore. I look at that Common Core curriculum.
Well,
that's
true.
in the third grade. Give me a break.
But I don't think if you're in the second or third grade, you're really in a position where telling somebody that they'll be more successful later in life,
Great,
or
okay,
that
fine.
it's important.
So I'm in third grade, but
so
you don't need to rely on just extrinsics. What would you say to me to try to build an intrinsic valuing of doing homework, even if I find it boring or irrelevant?
Well, you can have the conversation. Some of the things that I have to do are not things I really want to do. They're kind of boring. I was going to say making the bed, but I'm thinking that our granddaughters never make the bed. So they live in a different reality than I do. But I would say I do that because then it's nicer when you get into it at night. So you make the bed, it takes an extra minute. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but it's not so terrible. And life is filled with things that we need to do that are not always fun, but we need to do them. We walk the dog. Is it necessarily so much fun to do? No, but we walk the dog because the dog needs to be walked. It makes him more comfortable. It makes him happier.
I think I need a dog break. Einstein, come here. Who's the big turkey? Who's the big? I don't know. This has nothing to do with anything, but Einstein, come on.
He can't. He's
He
tied
can't. Oh,
to-
he's tied to you. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. I don't know if you can see. Anyway, all right. Now, I'm done. Break done. Let's turn away from homework, and let's now move to, as we promised, sex or drugs, which you want
No,
to talk
you
about.
promise.
Yeah, well, is that not a reasonable thing? I mean, if you've got a kid who's not good now, they're a teenager, there's going to be sex and drug issues, yes?
Yes.
Which do you want to talk about first? Notice, by the way, the two choices thing. Just like I said, do you want to do your homework
Right.
in the kitchen
I
or in
want
your
to
room?
say neither one, but okay.
Okay, so which would you like to talk about
Well,
first?
I think you don't start talking about sex when your child is a teenager. You got to start talking about that way earlier.
But let's say that we all know about the birds and bees conversation. That's all well. Well, let's do that for a moment. Let's say I am 9, 10, 8, somewhere in there. How would you go about? What would be the steps in sex education that you would
Well,
take as a
pretty
parent?
much you're going to answer a child's questions. Sometimes we're so nervous about broaching the topic that we do it way too early, and we tell kids things that they can't begin to understand. They're confused.
Good point.
And sometimes frightened.
Good point.
So you want to answer the child's question, and you want to answer it in the easiest way possible without going into all of the details, because they're not looking for that either.
All right, so let me start. I'm 8 or 9. Mommy, did the stork bring me here?
No. There is no. Well, there
No
are storks,
stork.
but the stork didn't bring you.
Stork.
Who told you the stork brought you?
My friend Caitlin told me.
Oh, well, lots of people like to hang up a stork in front of somebody's house and pretend that that's how the baby got here. But mommies have babies. They give birth to babies.
Okay. Hey, mommies give birth to...
And know this, that's all I
That
said.
was-
I didn't tell you how all that happened because I'm not,
For
you're
instance,
not,
time...
you may not be ready for that.
Okay. For interest of time, because we only have 3 minutes left till the show's over, so let's turn to let's say I am now a teenager, and let's say I'm a boy and maybe you see condoms in my drawer, or maybe you come into my room with my girlfriend and I'm 12 or 13 years old and we're dishabillé, we're not fully clothed, or whatever. What do you say?
I would walk out of the room, and then I would knock on the door and I would say, please make yourselves presentable. And that's all I would do. I don't want to embarrass them. But then after the other partner goes home, I would have a conversation with my child.
And say, or do you want me to try?
I would say, I think that you're playing with some dangerous things. It's very, it seems very fun, but when you're putting yourself in that position, somebody could get pregnant, and that's not what you want to do to someone who you care about.
I'm going to take a shot at it myself. Let's say I was a teenager myself, and it is really a powerful drive when you're feeling fond towards somebody. You want to be physical. You want to hug them. You want to touch them, and you're also curious. I can certainly understand it, but there really are some risks. So let's talk a little bit about it, but let's start with you asking me questions. I will love you no matter what, and I want to keep our lines of communication always open. So I'm not going to punish you, I'm not going to give you time out, but let's talk about it. And for interest of time, that's all we've got time to talk about today. And so, and because the time is run out, we're not going to have a chance to talk about drugs. You got your wish. We don't have time to talk about drugs. So let's summarize. Let's each take just a few seconds. Say, what is the 1 or 2 things we most want people to remember, parents or teachers or other relatives or friends, about if you've got a difficult child? What's the big takeaway? And this you can just tell the...
Well, I think first of all, you don't want to tell your child that he or she is bad. You always want to say that behavior was bad. I don't want to see that behavior repeated. I think you want to do something to prevent. You want to set up rules. You want your children to know what's expected of them. You want to reward them when they meet those expectations, and you want to have a conversation with them when they don't. And you start by taking away some privileges for a short period of time, and always look for an opportunity to catch your child doing something right.
Sounds great. I want to just simply say, it really is about moderation. You know, moderate limits, moderate amount of vigilance, moderate praise when deserved, moderate punishment, and give yourself a break. It ain't always going to be perfect. Next time, in our next show, we're going to be talking about something very different, more fun, how to look your best. I'm Marty Nemko.
And I'm Barbara Nemko.